Российские солдаты и офицеры защищают единство России. Это непременное условие существования российского государства. Чеченская республика – часть Российской Федерации, состав которой закреплен Конституцией.
At the end of December, the Russians rushed in additional forces for a tank assault. The target, Dudayev's presidential palace in the heart of Grozny. The Russians chose that day, New Year's Eve 1994, for their assault into Grozny. It's gone down as an object lesson in how not to use tanks in a city. Poorly trained Russian conscripts didn't know that their armour would be destroyed by the kinds of weapons so widely available in the arms bazaars. Chechens were seen arguing over who got to blow up the next tank. To survive, the Russian infantry needed to dismount and fight. Instead, terrified, hundreds burnt alive in their vehicles without ever firing a shot. An entire brigade was wiped out. 20 out of 26 tanks and 102 out of 120 armoured personnel carriers. It was a shocking fiasco.
Какой, простите, дурак мог послать в город танки?
What sort of fool would send tanks into a city where at any corner a simple grenade launcher could destroy them? Without proper infantry, without proper air cover. In all respects, it was a death sentence.
Smarting, the Russians decided to do it by the book. The same book as Stalingrad and Berlin.
И сейчас ты горд, гордый, как и твой народ.
50,000 artillery rounds a day were fired into Grozny. Whole city blocks were flattened.
По детям пролет, ноги у братьев уже не вернут никогда. Грозный их под собой схоронил навсегда. Днем и ночью штурмуют риском, залп орудия. Пылает огнем, алым цветом окрашен снег января, и повсюду лежащие трупы врага.
After several weeks of pounding, the Chechen commander ordered his fighters out of Grozny. Exhausted Russian troops took control of a ruin. It's estimated that the Battle of Grozny cost 27,000 civilian lives. But the Chechen War was only 4 months old. Chechen fighters moved into the same mountain villages and forests that had provided the last bastion of 19th century resistance. It had become a merciless guerrilla war.
We'd move convoys without proper intelligence, without cover, and they'd hit the first vehicle and the last vehicle, and there'd be no escape. Everybody would then be systematically killed.
No prisoners were taken. The brutality was even celebrated in Chechen videos. This played well among militant Islamists, and these tapes were used for fundraising in the Middle East. A jihad trail began, radical Muslims travelling to Chechnya to fight. The numbers were small, but the cash was vital. But the foreign support couldn't turn the tide. After 6 months of fighting, the Chechen fighters were bottled up in the mountains and in trouble. It seemed that all the rebels could offer were exchanges of corpses. But a cornered wolf is often at its most dangerous.
We won't hurt the women and children. We aren't maniacs. If our demands aren't met, I'll leave that up to the glorious Russian army.
But Basayev's words were a mockery. He'd just taken hostage 1,500 pregnant women, new mothers and doctors at a maternity hospital in Budyonovsk, deep inside southern Russia.
The Prime Minister called me. He said the situation couldn't be worse. It was an entire hospital. There were a lot of hotheads calling for an attack. Smash them and smash them again.
When Russian troops tried storming the hospital, the whole country watched in horror as over 150 patients died. The assault failed. The white flags of the surviving patients signaling the Kremlin's next step. The Chechens still controlled the hospital. Russia's Prime Minister agreed to a ceasefire in Chechnya. Terror had won. The hospital siege won the Chechens a crucial breather. By the winter of 1996, the war had been going on for a year. Tens of thousands had been killed. But Chechenya's President Dudayev would not bury the rhetoric.
Есть оккупанты, но это временно. Мы собираемся оставить здесь ограниченный контингент. Те, которые уже умерли, и те, которые готовы умереть на этой земле. Остальные должны или покинуть, или умереть. Середины у нас не бывает.
A few weeks later, Dudayev himself was killed. A Russian-guided missile homed in on his satellite phone.
Дудаев погиб, то это он развязал войну. Это по его вине развязана война в Чечне. Он хотел войны, а мы хотели мира.
But killing Dudayev didn't bring Yeltsin victory. The war simmered on. In fact, the new Chechen leadership prepared a blow to end the war on its own terms.
The Russians had moved thousands of troops into the mountains where our bases were. And we decided we wouldn't fight them.
Ahmed Zakayev, the actor turned foot soldier, was now a key commander.
So we carried out a maneuver. We moved our forces past their lines back into the valley.
Assuming Grozny was secure, the Russians ran down their garrison there to about 5,000 troops. It was a fatal error. The Chechens made plans to reoccupy the city and take on the scattered checkpoints and barracks. The trap was sprung a few days before President Yeltsin was due to be sworn in for a second term. One doomed Russian unit, surrounded by Chechen fighters, filmed its own last moments as they radioed for help.
All our units, the Interior Ministry, the Army, the security services, they were crushed. Our federal forces throughout Chechnya were in desperate straits.
The tables had been turned again. The Russians made a deal with the Chechen general Maskadov. The little republic had another chance for independence. After presidential elections, Maskadov swapped his camouflage for a politician's suit, but his country was shattered. Chechnya remained in a legal limbo. Only the Taliban recognized their independence. The country had sunk to its knees, and there seemed no way to revive its economy or curb the gunmen. It was isolated from Russia and the world.
Well, this was a very ugly period in Chechnya, and I think no one comes out of it with any credit. You had these field commanders who'd won a victory against the Russians and basically threw everything away by turning to crime, to smuggling, to drugs trading, and particularly to hostage taking.
While at war, the field commanders, warlords, had obeyed General Maskadov. But now, with the Russians gone, the gunmen ignored him. They became a menace, refusing to disarm, turning Chechnya into a vortex of crime and kidnapping.
There was an explosion in crime. There were no jobs. People felt they had to provide for their families, and crime was an easy answer.
At first, kidnap gangs seized other Chechens, then Russians, then some of the very few foreigners brave enough to live there.